Andy, would you like to start out talking about the IDEA committee and what it is and how this all came to be?
Certainly. So I think it was summer of 2020 when we were, well, I don't know what was happening in summer of 2020. It's all a blur. But I do know that somehow I thought it would be a good idea as being part of the EDI committee for IPS that my regional planetarium association, which is the PPA, should likewise have some sort of committee working on the same sort of issues. So you volunteer something and then you have to head it. So I became chair of the committee for PPA, which we decided to call the IDEA committee. So adding A, so inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility. And so we met for the first time last summer. Well, no, I shouldn't say last summer because it's fall now. So summer of 2020, and knocked around a few ideas, pun intended, of what we should focus on, and decided to come up with a particularly narrow focus. And what we thought we could get more accomplished. And it's a large thing to consider. And what we came up with was working on land acknowledgements. So in many countries that have been colonized, Canada, New Zealand, Australia being 3 examples, land acknowledgements have become more common. We can read you some examples later if you want, but this is to kind of acknowledge the people that came before us. And I do want to, point out probably what's obvious. Neither Mark nor I are of Indigenous background. We are not attempting to speak for Indigenous people. The idea behind raising land acknowledgement as an issue was to become allies and raise this issue up for Indigenous people because there are not enough of them around for obvious reasons that go back in time, and we need to step up. So that's kind of the genesis of it. I think Ryan Wyatt's on our committee, and he was particularly key in kind of driving that particular focus.
I sort of feel like that Indigenous cultures and how we relate to them with our institutions is something that we all do and that many times we don't really think very much about. There's sort of a mistaken idea in the public at large that what happened with Native Americans and Indigenous cultures here on this continent is a historical event, that it happened a long time ago, but it is very much a living concept to the people who belong to those cultures today, and they are here among us. They are members of our own community. And I think in the interest of all fairness and being responsive to all members of the community, it's important to acknowledge that and to work with people as we move forward and in many cases adapt portions of their culture to our institutions. I have a video here that I would like to play. It's about 4 minutes long, so I'm gonna share the screen, but neither Andy or I speak for Indigenous people, so this video is a gesture towards letting them speak for themselves about what this means to them.
Well, she's getting that ready. I just want to say, I think this is a really appropriate topic for LIPS because I'm going to share a document probably towards the end, And again, you probably know Annette Lee, and she's posted this document that she worked on with the IPS Indigenous Astronomy Working Group that has tips and best practices for how to collaborate with Indigenous people. And one thing she says in there is that Indigenous astronomy has people at its center, which I think is very deep and important. We're not talking about facts when we delve into Indigenous astronomy. And the other part of it is we didn't call this, session, this is not about land acknowledgements, it's about Indigenous collaboration, with land acknowledgement being kind of a gateway to working with Indigenous people. It's not an endpoint to come up with a land acknowledgement and say it before every planetarium show and consider yourself done. So it's interacting with Indigenous people and raising their voice, and their voice is the one that matters, not ours.
Before I begin this morning, I'd like to recognize the Algonquin Nation.
We good?
On this traditional territory we are gathering.
Just go full screen,
Acknowledge
maybe?
them as the past, present caretakers of this land.
Wherever I go on God's green earth, I do the Lakota tradition of acknowledging the four directions, the land, and the people living there. Chimaka, as I call Grandmother Earth, the land, I view her as a sacred, living entity, and that's why we acknowledge it in, Lakota thought and philosophy.
As a Native person, I'm ready for any kind of confrontation that might come up, or I'm preparing myself to remind people of all those things that they forget about. I was at a meeting in Minneapolis, and the room was primarily non-Native people. I was in a non-Native organization, but this executive director got up and said, okay, we're gonna get started. So everybody, was sitting down and getting quiet. And she said, I'd like to get started by acknowledging the Indigenous culture of Minnesota. And I was like, wow. And it just made everything fall away a little bit from me. My guard went down, I was more relaxed. Because by saying that, that means she understands something that is just you can't talk about, right? It just relaxed me as a minority, as a woman, and as a Native person. It just pulled away this layer that's always there, It was super cool.
We're at a time where non-Native cultures are understanding the traditions of Indigenous peoples for probably the first time in our histories. So when I go to New Zealand, the protocol is to acknowledge each other's ancestors and your mountains and your rivers. And that's such a beautiful tradition. When people are in that space and say, we acknowledge who you are, this land, where your people come from, they're saying we acknowledge a relationship, but we're also creating that relationship. This is a good thing.
The important thing would be that folks would then sit with that. What does it mean that our settlement is occupying this space? And what responsibility do I have considering that legacy to these contemporary things, right? And how do I stop distancing myself from that? Ideally, that would be, for me, the impact that this has.
If you start acknowledging that the land that you're standing on and the space that you are in belong to people that are still here, makes so much more room for understanding of all these other issues. It's one of those little things that if it could just tip a little bit, all the dominoes that could fall from it, I think are important.
Now I'm imagining it and wanting to live in that, the thing that I'm imagining, yeah, that's actually really beautiful.
It's just being a genuine human being to acknowledge each other's histories, the good and the bad.
as Andy was saying, it is about more than just land acknowledgement, because many of us do more than that when we present stories in our planetarium that come from indigenous cultures and so forth, that it's really, I feel it is important to sort of raise awareness about this, to help bring about a change in the way that people think about who we are here today and who was here before us and who is still here with us. So, Emily, are you willing to speak a little bit?
Sure.
Okay. So Emily here at Imiloa is kind of in a sort of, I don't know, a hyper version of this issue. It goes deep into almost every aspect of what happens in her neck of the woods. So I'm going to let her talk about the situation and ways that you've confronted that and come up with new solutions.
So getting into this, I think most of you probably haven't had the opportunity to visit eMiloa, maybe just with the exception of a couple, but eMiloa Astronomy Center, it's based in Hilo on the Big Island of Hawaii. And our entire center was created in the nexus around the controversy that surrounds the Mauna Kea issue of the continued construction and astronomy occurring on Mauna Kea. And this is so fantastic. At the beginning of this week, my director actually gathered all staff together and did like a whole review of eMiloa's history sort of thing. So the mountain Mauna Kea is the largest mountain on our big island of Hawaii. It is the tallest mountain in the world. And arguably, in my highly biased opinion, it is the best place in the world for ground-based observations and study of the stars. And a lot of the initial building of observatories on Mauna Kea began in the 1960s, and it was used as an economic boom. Our island just had a massive, I wasn't alive at this point, but our island had like a massive tsunami and our economy wasn't doing well. And so astronomy was initially welcomed. But at the same time, it was the voices of Hawaiian people, Native Hawaiian, the ethnic group of Hawaiian was not recognized. One quick note, because I know this often comes up whenever I speak with people who are primarily from the mainland. Hawaiian is an ethnic group. It is Native Hawaiians. If you live in Hawaii, you are a Hawaii resident, you're a Hawaii local, but you're only Hawaiian if you are part of that ethnic group. Oftentimes people do like a shorthand, like how you do with the other states, like if you're from California, you're a Californian, they'll try to do that with Hawaii, but there's a difference there. Hawaiian is purely that ethnic group. So anyway, Native Hawaiian voices weren't really consulted with a lot of this astronomy happening. And within the 60s, there's also the Hawaiian Renaissance going on, where a lot of cultural practices were coming back into focus. And so this started up this controversy around Mauna Kea, because Mauna Kea is considered a very sacred place in certain aspects of Hawaiian culture. So eMiloa Astronomy Center is born at the nexus of this. It is, our entire center is meant to be the place for the conversation around this controversy to occur. We are neutral within it. We are here to support the education of both the cultural aspects and the scientific aspects and scientific benefits of it. So I think this came up when Mark and Andy started up the IDEA committee a while ago. Asked many planetarians to join in on this to talk about how infuse cultural aspects of indigenous cultures into our planetariums. And when it came my turn, I was like, because we are born in this nexus and this is our mission statement, we're never not doing anything cultural. everything that we do connects back to Hawaiian culture in some way. I know in the chat earlier, people are talking about STEM and introducing it to STEAM. And we often say at iMiloa, we are STEAM to the power of C. So technology, engineering, art, math to the power of culture. I can't take credit for that. That was my director came up with that term. Yeah, so, and honestly, one way is like, I feel a little bit awkward even speaking about it. I'm probably one of maybe 3 people of primarily European descent on staff. So we're a very diverse community here in Hawaii and across Hilo, and even that is reflected in our staffs. And however, I am the last planetarium person standing currently at the center due to COVID. Anyway, I think
okay, yeah, that was really good. And I think the important thing there, one of the major points is that when you present cultural information in your planetarium, when anybody does that, they too are at that nexus between respectfully presenting that culture and, you know, the culture that created the framework, or whether your institution or astronomy or whatever, that it is sort of a responsibility that we take on to do that in a way that is respectful of the past and builds on the future, and that that the people involved feel comfortable with. And the best way to make them feel comfortable is to engage them in the process. And that is one of the main things that we in the IDEA committee are trying to do, is to make people more aware of the idea of collaboration with Indigenous cultures when they embark on this, and helping to raise the consciousness of their audience to be thinking about that, because that ultimately is how this gets better, is that people start to think about it differently. So thank you, Emily. I really appreciate your doing that. Do you have anything you would like to add?
Well, I'm going to echo, I didn't want to call him out, but Tony Smith is also on this call here, and he's at Bishop Museum.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
So he gets to deal with a lot of the art cultural issues as well. And he put in the chat, and I will echo this as well, that one of the most important things is to not place these cultures in the past, put them in the present. Yes. I tried to eliminate words like ancient out of my vocabulary when I'm describing things. These constellations aren't ancient. This is not an ancient story. These are not the ancient people sort of thing, because ancient is putting that big divide when these people who think these things are still here, and you never know, they might be in your audience.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's very, it's just a matter of common respect that we need to be more aware of. So yes, I totally agree with that. And thank you, Tony. So one of the great things from the video, there's a gentleman who said that when he hears land acknowledgement statements, he says it makes him feel like people are saying, we are acknowledging who you are. And that's really what we would like to accomplish. So Andy, would you like to jump in and maybe talk about the land acknowledgement project, or the project with Kreyche, or?
Yeah, I mean, another thing I wanted to point up is, you know, in the planetarium, we're trying to inspire and create a relationship with nature. And this is something these cultures did and do naturally. And there's such a, it's so enmeshed with their way of life. And, you know, thinking back in time, you know, just think about things in our current culture that we take for granted, whatever it may be. You know, these are people that are trying to, well, especially around where I live. There are very few Native people left, but they're trying to kind of rebuild their culture piece by piece from fragments. And yeah, again, I go back to respect. That requires an awful lot of respect. And it's really our job as non-Indigenous people to listen, and to let them have a voice. So yeah, I can read a sample land acknowledgement if you'd like. I live in Santa Cruz, California, and this is a sample land acknowledgement from here. The land on which we gather is the unceded territory of the Awaswas speaking Uipi tribe. The Amamutsan tribal band, comprised of the descendants of Indigenous people taken to missions Santa Cruz and San Juan Bautista during Spanish colonization of the Central Coast, is today working hard to restore traditional stewardship practices on these lands and heal from historical trauma. We remember their connection to this region and give thanks for the opportunity to live, work, learn, and pray on their traditional homeland. Let's take a moment to pay respect to their elders and to all Indigenous people, past and present. It's not meant to focus on colonization, but to acknowledge it, but more importantly, acknowledge the living people. So yeah, that's all I'll say about that.
Yeah, there's really two sides to this coin. There is creating the land acknowledgement of a culture's material put into a show. Part is the creation of that, and that is a collaborative effort that really should be done with members, if possible, with members of the Indigenous culture. And that requires finding out who they are. For instance, here in Chicago, there are a lot of different people that live in this area and still do. So, you know, depending on what part of town you're in, it can be different. So it's a matter of doing some research and then reaching out and opening up a discussion and mutually coming together with a way to create this acknowledgement. We'd like to discourage people from going out and doing this all on their own, even though that's easier to just like, oh, I'll just write one of those and we'll do it. It really does need to be done in collaboration to be meaningful. So we're looking to provide resources and encouragement and hopefully guidance for doing that. We are working with the planetarium, the Willard Smith at Pacific Science Center in Seattle, to create a land acknowledgement statement for their planetarium, and kind of using that process that we go through and the members of their local cultures to create sort of some guidelines and try to find some places where there might be pitfalls and help people be able to do this more easily for themselves in their own local place.
And I'll point out too that we want to do this in the spirit of raising them up and valuing them, and often that may mean paying them for their time. And I know planetariums historically don't have huge budgets for this sort of thing. But again, just something to keep in the back of your mind. None of this is easy. We're not going to come up with a 5-step process and you can, say, okay, I followed these 5 steps, I'm done. It's not that easy.
Yeah, every single one is unique and has to be dealt with in its own way. And that's an adventure that you're going to have to undertake on your own. Mary added something to the chat that I would really like to emphasize, that even though this is a committee of the PPA, this committee is open to members from other regions. This is not really a West Coast issue. It's a global issue. So if you are interested in this, or if you want to know more, please reach out to us, and we would be happy to offer you any resources that we've found, and kind of help you in any way that we can to undertake this process. Or you can become a member of our committee and join us as well.
And just to whet your appetite, we had Emily and several other people who have done collaborations with Indigenous people, variety of people, a lot of them that you'll know, attend our meeting and give us anecdotes about their process and what worked for them and how it went. And there will be a panel made up of a subset of that group, probably 3 people. And they will be appearing at the monthly, I always get the name wrong, PPA Zoom seminar in October, which will be October 29th. Not real convenient for East Coast people, but you guys have hung in here this late today. So it's at 2 p.m. Pacific time, October 29th. And I'll be posting on Dome Dialogues, and I know Alan Gould sends out a notice about that. So there'll be more details about that upcoming.
We should wrap up in about 1 minute. Sorry.
Okay. Oh no, that's fine. Yeah. So we encourage you to tune into that. The last meeting that we had people from all over the country with us, kind of telling their stories of their experience of working with Indigenous cultures in their area. It's fascinating stuff, and by and large, pretty successful. As I say, Emily is probably the hardest case. I mean, it does permeate everything that they do at Iniloa. So thank you very much, Emily, for being part of our presentation here. We appreciate it. And we just hope that folks reach out to us.